Well, I had considered playing that music before, or at the very outset of our time together. And as things worked out, that happened. So I'm glad you could hear that music, and I hope that it created a certain atmosphere for us. I just want to repeat the chorus. Oh, mystery, you are alive. I feel you all around. You are the fire in my heart. You are the holy sound. You're all of life. It is you, to you I sing. Oh, grant that I may feel you always in everything. The theme of mystery is showing up in many quarters in our communications of late. In one of the recent postings on Great Cosmic Story, Martin referred to the great mystery. He was speaking of the book Hantayo, which describes native spirituality. And he quoted a poem that the author included in the book twice in a service that he gave. But I'm going to take two verses and change the order just to share something with you. I am that which they call great mystery. I am that which each one calls Wakatanga before coming here, before seeing the light. I am here, and so I know. Here I know everything. Here I know myself. I stand at the center, and the light shines all around me. And now I know that my spirit glowing makes this light. I come into power with the sun, for I am the sun. I am my own light. And Martin, in his characteristic way of distilling something right to the core essence, said later in the service, I stand at the center and the light shines all around me. I am the light. And it's true. As we stand at the center, we are that radiant presence of the sun, of the light that we each are, of the light that surrounds us in this level of creation we see everywhere, as the song said. Also recently on the Great Cosmic Story, there was a service by Martin entitled The True Hologram. And I want to quote something as we gather some substance here together with all of you. He was speaking of a letter that Martin had received from Bill Bain Sr., who had just met up with David Bohm in England. So this is Martin quoting the letter from Bill. Using scientific terms, he, David Bohm, has come to some interesting realizations, showing much truth moving in his subconscious. I would quote one of his realizations. The theory, in a nutshell, is this: our brains mathematically construct concrete reality by interpreting frequencies from another dimension, a realm of meaningful, patterned, primary reality that transcends time and space. The brain is a hologram, interpreting a holographic universe. And then Martin said, maybe he needs to see that there's more to it than just the brain. But what he says, we should understand. We create our own worlds, what he calls concrete reality, the environment around us. And then again, Martin, in his ability to distill, said, I have described this process in a little different terms. This is Martin's phrasing. There is a vibrational state of primary reality transcending space and time. Obviously, something emerges into space and time. It emerges there because of human beings. Shirley Malin recently gave a service, and she blessed us with so many descriptions and insights and stories, but there was this one paragraph that stuck out for me, and I knew I wanted to go back to it. So I pulled it out, and I'd like to read it to you because it fits. She said, Shirley, as Martin said, there may be all kinds of things that are wrong, unjust, unfair, but all such distorted patterns would very easily evaporate if one didn't support them. I mean, all the things that are going on in the earth now, how do you suppose they have any energy to continue? Where does that force come from? It all comes from the Creator, whether it's for disintegration or integration. It's all from the same source. So what is disrupting it? What's creating the mess? It's the impure heart. It's like a transistor radio seeking to receive the transmission from the Lord. And then there's so much static in it that what comes out is indiscernible. And we have robbed all this beautiful energy that has been provided for us to fill the earth, to replenish the earth, to bless the earth. I'm using these different quotations to gather the substance here, to share with you an experience that I've been having for about 7 months in a focused way that I feel is such a blessing that we have been given. And it's called attunement. I think attunement has an ability, with regard to what I just read, to bring in a transcendent reality into our experience here in space and time. And because it works with substance, it's working with focusing a radiation and intensifying a generation so that the radiation can come through in our very experience. This to me is something pretty magical and something that we were offered in our experience, which we've all had many times. We've shared attunements. Recently, certain things have happened in the world and in my life, and as often happens, an opportunity arose where I was able to offer to share attunement with a few specific people who were working with specific issues. And I entered into this world that, quite honestly, I hadn't fully penetrated before. And I know many of you have. I know many are here with me who have a deep experience of attunement. And I certainly am not going to try to describe the whole of what attunement is, because each one has their own experience of it. But I will describe what has happened for me. Working with attunement has brought into my awareness that it's all about the radiation. When we talk about the transcendent reality, the light, the dimensions that are in another realm, another way to describe it is that there's a radiation that's entering into this level of creation that actually is fueling and giving life to everything in this level of creation. So radiation is something that we could well meditate on for our whole lifetimes. When we share attunement, we are specifically working as conduits of radiation. The radiation is not ours. The radiation is life is that transcendent reality that we are experiencing in this level of creation. But we have an opportunity to understand what that is right here in the flesh on earth and have an experience of transcendent reality here. And attunement is an incredible vehicle for this.
Come here, baby.
When I share attunement for various reasons, it's mostly been distance attunement or long distance attunement. I think it was Joanne Tell who said in Chris Jorgensen's book that once you begin to experience long distance attunement, you will be forever changed. And that has certainly been my experience. Although it's wonderful to have a real body lying in front of you in a yielded stance, and that has huge merits. When you're sharing an attunement long distance with another angel, you have less distraction of the immediate physicality, and you're really, really encouraged to touch into the invisible realms in a more consequential way. Also, I find that because you are doing it at a distance, your own consciousness becomes more activated. There's nobody else there physically, but you can operate from your point of consciousness and bring something to focus in your consciousness, which also is participating in the attunement. The radiation is coming through your consciousness. It became very clear to me pretty quickly that I was actually sharing an attunement. I wasn't giving an attunement. I was actually sharing an attunement with another angel. And that together we were coming into an experience of union, which allowed for an intensification of the radiation for that person's physical body, for my physical body and mind. There was an actual sharing going on. And together, there was a lighting up that was going out beyond us. But before I get into that and various things that I've learned, I have to acknowledge, and I know you will understand this, where the radiation actually is coming from, where that transcendent reality is coming from. Where is it? And we have to acknowledge that, as Tony so beautifully highlighted in the last service here in the Temple of Light, the attitude is that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. The radiation actually has a source, which Shirley also mentioned. So I, as coming to the experience of sharing an attunement, I first have to be in attunement myself with the Creator, with a yieldedness, with an absolute humility that this is something that I am participating in by virtue of the Creator. I'm able to intensify and focus my own radiation, but it is because it's in alignment and in union with a far greater source. So that's the beginning point. When an attunement is begun, of course, we all know that it begins with the pineal and works with the first three spiritual points in the physical body, you might say. And those represent, you might say, the heavenly aspect of a being, a heavenly aspect of an angel in human form. And those points in the physical body are actual receptivity to the spirits of love and truth and life. Can you think of a more ingenious design than to have capacities that have these points in our very physical being that are highly attuned and ready to connect with the transcendent reality? Then we have, looking at the last three seals, we have 3 other points: the new earth, the spirit of the single eye, and the spiritual expression aspects. You might say those are the earth aspect of a being, of an angel in human form. So you have 2 lots. You have the heaven, you have the earth, and then what happens in the middle? We have what I will generally call the heart realm, coming to focus in the thymus gland. It became pretty clear after sharing attunement that this was the crossover point. This was the part that was actually connecting the heaven aspect and the earth aspect. That was a real mind blower when I actually realized the importance of the heart realm in the process of bringing the earth and the heaven and the earth aspects of a being together. When you come to an attunement, one of the main things for both the person giving the attunement and the person receiving the attunement is the fact that a troubled heart just does not work. It will literally stop the radiation from being generated, I have found. And it's only as I come into the attunement experience with a calm appreciation, humble appreciation for what I've been invited into, that the current begins to pick up. The radiation increases. There's something about removing the troubled heart, the restless schemes, all that. When those fall away and the radiation actually influences one's heart realm, which is ready to receive this. We're designed to receive this. There's a fire, you might say, that lights up in one's being, and one comes into union within oneself, union with the person who is sharing the attunement with, and all together in union with the Lord. So from that, I learned that I had a certain responsibility coming into an attunement with a calm heart and with a humble heart. And if that happened before the attunement, then it had to be sustained after the attunement. And this was an incredible purification process that I entered into. And I know you have all had your own experience of this, and this is preaching to the converted. But I just want to emphasize what a learning opportunity this vehicle afforded me. There were literal times in the course of my days when I became involved in this process with other angels that I would instantly have to attune to the transcendent state, to the finest dimensions coming in, rather than any kind of disturbance that might be appearing in my world. And I found responsibility was the word that came up. When I was sharing attunements, particularly if there was something very serious working out with someone, I was entering into a contract with that person. And I had a responsibility in that contract. If I would not hold and honor that sacred contract in my living all the time, it was tantamount to dropping a person. I couldn't do that anymore. I could not do that when it came down to specific angels. Now, what does that say? It means that this is representative of something that's happening all the time with many of those that we are connected with. It really brought a new sense of heightened responsibility, which wasn't a burden. It was a huge gift. Another aspect that happens when the substance begins to be generated, the finer substance of love. was that I would find, and I'm sure you've had this experience, that I would have thoughts, feelings come into awareness that I had never had before. I could tell that these were original thoughts and feelings that were coming in the moment, that were actually aspects of the transcendent reality coming into awareness. I find this an extremely interesting aspect of attunement. You might say, are you really helping this other person heal from some physical ailment? Well, I have kind of redefined what actually is happening in an attunement. When the radiation is heightened, which is love, love casts out fear, love casts out whatever unbalance was present. So the actual ailment, although it has been impacted, is, you might say, secondary to the angel who is present, taking dominion in that physical being. And that heals. All these things have been a great blessing to me. In my particular being, maybe you're one of these beings. I think we all are to some extent. I needed those times of sanctified space, of holiness in my day. And it has opened up a new quality in my awareness, in the living of the rest of my life. I've also come to realize that attunement takes many forms. We all know this. That when I'm doing anything, actually, that is allowing the radiation from the undimensional to be coming through me as a human being, being human. So I wanted to open up this area and to honor, and I'm thinking of those attunement servers who are watching me, I can see your faces, who honor this vehicle called attunement and what it actually affords us. Martin said something that I found really profound, and I read it after I've been having this experience. And he said, attunement is designed to provide what is needful to initiate the process by which a consciousness of the oneness of heaven and earth may be known once more. The transcendent reality, the heaven, becomes part of our earth here in space and time. What better way to have this blessing called attunement that can initiate that experience? Now, you may have had that experience initiated a long time ago, and I'm so grateful for all of those who have. For me, this has been a deep gift that has come to me, and I just wanted to open that up for meditation amongst us. Now I'd like to turn it over to my friend, Deborah Stars, who has been patiently listening to what I'm saying. And Deborah, I hope that I've offered you some openings that you can continue in unfolding through your beautiful consciousness. I look forward to hearing what you're going to say.
Thank you very much, Anne, for this opportunity. As you were speaking about attunement, it came to my mind that I very much enjoy discovering people who are awakening to the truth of themselves. And they're all over the internet these days. They're every bit as enthusiastic about God's plan and God wins, but they also emphasize individual responsibility in letting that come on earth. So I ran across one particular fellow who was speaking about human beings contributing and changing the biosphere as we travel across town or across the world we're breathing, we're sweating, etc. But he also said that we influence the pneumosphere. Well, that was interesting because it sounds very much like pneumoplasm. So St. Francis came to mind. Our presence in the world impacts physically and vibrationally. We do live in a world of our own creation, and we are responsible for the quality of it. We each have a journey that brought us to here and now. And I have very much enjoyed hearing other people's personal experience of coming to knowledge. And so I thought I would share a few incidents of my journey, which as things were happening, my life appeared to be kind of staccato, no coherent direction at all, but nothing could be further from the truth. I was 5 years old on a beautiful summer day, and the vacant lot next to my grandmother was planted with roses. I was kind of small for my age at the time, and those roses, some of them towered over my head. So it was like a rose forest. And I was wandering up and down the aisles and singing to myself. It was so beautiful. And then suddenly something came over me of great sadness. And it didn't make any sense at all. And I started crying, almost sobbing. And because I couldn't figure it out, I was rubbing my head. Well, I finally wandered into the house, and my grandmother and mother intercepted me, and they wanted to know what was wrong. I didn't know. I only knew that something terrible had happened. So finally they said, "Did you bump your head?" And I said, "Yeah, that's what happened." And then I got all the hugs and kisses and went on my merry way back outside to swing in the swing set. That was my first experience of such a thing. I knew something, and I didn't know how. Along about the same time, same age, my father sat me on a stool, and he taught me the meaning of and the spelling of the word integrity, which was to figure very much into my life in later years. He also taught me the word propaganda, its meaning, and how to spell it when I was a teenager. I give great thanks to my parents, both of whom set me up beautifully to discover and establish a spiritual foundation for my living. Dad was an interesting man. He was a staunch patriot, a genius inventor, and he also had a good sense of humor. If you would ask him any question, mundane, sometimes out of the blue, like, "What would you like for dinner?" he would say, "I haven't given it much thought, and furthermore, I'm not going to change my mind." I really appreciated that sense of humor, and I found it to stand me in good stead. In my early 20s, a group of us, small group, consistently 3 of us, and sometimes more, would get together to consider things spiritual, all things spiritual. And one evening it came up that Jesus died on the cross for your sins. And again, out of the blue, this overwhelming, vehement, no, that is not true came out. Well, nobody had ever told me that. I had never read it. And my friends looked at me like I had 2 heads. Well, fast forward to these same 2 friends took me off to the Dallas's first annual psychic fair, and the Reverend Dr. Bill Bayan was there. And the next thing I knew, I was at Lake Rest and then at a 1-month class at 100 Mile House. And sitting there in the little log chapel, I heard Yolanda's voice for the first time. And the tears came. It took me right back to that rose garden, which must have been August 4th, 1954. And here he was, introducing meeting my king. And I was meeting my king who didn't die on the cross. I'm sure you've had these knowings, maybe preform. Coming events do cast their shadows. And then in the spiral of living, they come round to come true. I'll give you one more incident. I met Tom Stars on 2 casual occasions and only knew him through his writings in Word of Grace. When my good friend came home from Green Pastures, engaged to Tom, I went, no, I'm supposed to be with him. I went home talking to myself, and then I let it go. Well, 20 years or so later, a mutual friend put us together at a dinner party, and we're still together. No, I'll give you one more. Mr. Chris intercepted me on my first landing in Bombay, and we were riding into the city. I grabbed his arm and I said, Chris, I know this place. And he said, yes, Deborah, I think you do, but you're hurting my arm. So we have these knowings, and some Bible verses came to mind from Philippians 4:7, and the peace, we could say, knowledge of God, which passes all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Christ. This is the Christed mind. And from Habakkuk 2:14, for the earth shall be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea. These knowings are not, as a meme says, gut feelings or guardian angels. No, it's the angel coming forth with the knowledge of the Lord. In recent years, I've been watching and praying unceasingly. Human nature is quite predictable. It's ancient, in fact. It wants to control everything, from the weather, the climate, the population, people and events, money. To be as God. It seeks to control through fear, manipulation, guilt, and coercion. And deception's a big one. It would be quite comical if it wasn't so brutally destructive. Oh yes, and human nature loves to brag. It's arrogant. A far cry from the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. I recall Rhonda mentioning that there were 7 billion angels looking after this planet. So am I to believe him, or a mind-made computer model behind which is an agenda? All tended overlay of machines of loving grace? I think not. And really, what does it matter? I know the provision of the Lord is such to provide for however many of us are here. And who knows, it may just take that number of us here to get the job done. I test the spirits constantly. Thomas Jefferson had a great bit of advice. Fix reason firmly in her seat and call to her tribunal every fact, every opinion. Question with boldness, even the existence of God, because if there be one, he must more approve of the homage of reason than that of blindfolded fear. Hear, hear. Principled opposition is priceless. I am reminded that the master turned over the tables of the money changers. That must not have been pretty. He exposed them all, especially those in power. Whited sepulchres full of dead men's bones are still with us. This passage from Luke 8:17 comes to mind. For nothing is secret that shall not be made manifest, neither anything hid that shall not come abroad. We'd say that all things come to light. As things do come to light, we see them only with our eyes and no emotional entanglements. That is not to say that we do not feel deeply. Jesus wept. I've wept. I'm sure you have too. There has been so much suffering transpired that seems so unnecessary, except for awakening. Who can watch and pray? Martin mentioned in a service that we are moving into an atmosphere in the cosmos where the distortion of human nature can no longer be tolerated. I am interested in participating in that, bringing beauty, compassion, the truth of being as I move in the biosphere and the pneumosphere. I have great compassion for leadership, consistently down through the ages, committed to the restoration of man. We play an intercessory role in our immediate circumstances, individually and together, as we find ourselves in great good company of many people we don't really know who are doing the work too. I said to Martin on one occasion, I can't imagine being alive and not knowing you. He smiled and laid his hand on mine and said, we are all richly blessed. Functioning to our highest vision, we have experienced increasing vision and increasingly find ourselves in the right place at the right time to do the delightful work we have come to do, individually and together. So I would just close my portion with a poem, To Pray Without Ceasing. Whatever arises, let me dwell in the secret place of the Most High. Let there be a place of stillness in the midst of turmoil. Let there be a place of ease amid dis-ease. Let there be a place of order in the chaos. Let there be a place of love and beauty in the midst of fear and ugliness. Let my presence be a beacon of unfolding radiance in every circumstance. Be still and know. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. I liked your emphasis on the fact that we find ourselves in configurations, in settings, in experiences that we haven't determined, we haven't figured out them with our minds. But when we look around, we realize that we're experiencing something of the sacred. And we derive significance and meaning from those various experiences that we find with one another. I also appreciated the fact that you were talking about true thinking, clear thinking, and observing, as you said, with your eyes only, an actual knowing and in a different way than the human mind knows. And I think that the substance as it is generated, as it's fuller, as it's filled, allows that to happen. So I think we're talking about the same experience. What I love is the emphasis that you brought, and what I think too I was talking about, is that this is actual experience. Like, it's not an intellectual knowing, although that can come after the fact often, but it's actually a knowing, an experience. Heaven is at hand. We are, as Martin said, truly blessed. I also appreciated how you mentioned the fact that the human mind has interpretations of the world, as you relayed that story about your father, defining for you integrity and talking about propaganda, about how there will be things seen by others that may not be so, but there was an opportunity to see it in a whole new way. Here's a paragraph before we open it up for comments. It's in a service that was entitled Attunement by Martin, and I think you're going to see it on the Great Cosmic Story soon, so this is a preview. Many human beings have attempted to assume the attitude of the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, but generally speaking, they immediately build up concepts about God, about the truth, and they again establish a world based in their concepts and beliefs. So while the lips claims are made that there is the recognition, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein, it has had no effect. They remain in the hands of man. But he may think that by becoming spiritual, or at least religious, he can get around the fact that the earth is the Lord's, while continuing in his own determinations to keep the world for himself, all without treading on God's toes. So these words at the beginning of this psalm do not imply that we should begin to develop religious concepts or religious beliefs. It is merely a recognition of a fact which we do not understand presently, but which we may understand if we follow through in the creative cycle by which we are restored into the state where heaven and earth are one in our own experience. I think that you could replace spiritual and religious experience by political. There are many belief systems and concepts through which people view the world. And to actually have clear thinking is something that we have a responsibility for and access to. So I just wanted to mention that too. That the earth really is the Lord's, and that includes our own consciousness. Like there's something that's moving through all of us and moving us with that. And that doesn't mean we are powerless victims, but we are in union with what moves because we are that also. Anyway, I'd like to open up now for comments from any of you who wish to say something in our company today. And Greg, I know that you have your mic open, so just commenting on that. Okay.
Is my mic open? Okay, I don't know that I had anything to say, except I really appreciated what you said, and Deborah. I think it's just a pleasure to be connected in this way. And I was thinking, though, that as I was listening to you too, who you are, this has been said before, but who you are came through so loudly that that's what I really heard. And that's always been so. Anyway, thanks. I didn't know my mic was on. Okay.
Who you are definitely came through so loudly to me that I feel I just have to jump right in now and just voice my sheer delight at the beauty of what both of you offered. You just gave such a clear picture of what it actually means to come to a place of realization, of knowing absolutely with no shadow of turning that one only can keep moving upward in the spiral and never, ever turn our backs on the truth that we know. That to me is what you both embodied today. Just inviting us into the temple of light. And I'm just so aware of all that Yolanda did was inviting us into the temple, through the 7 steps to the temple of light, which is the attunement process. And as we come to realization, purification is a natural thing, and then we are in the inner realms, and heaven and earth is one. So I do so appreciate the beauty of what you both provided. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Anne
much for the
and
attunement.
Deborah, for what we've shared today. As Anne mentioned a number of times, we're not interested in belief systems or theories in any field, but to come to the experience of attunement. And Anne started off talking about the great mystery and the experience of life in individuals has been a great mystery. And Martin said, life is not a mystery to be solved, but an experience to be known. And today, we have known the experience of attunement. No one needs to explain it to us. We don't have to do a lot of reading about it. We just know it. And Anne and Deborah, you initiated the process by which we may have a greater consciousness of the oneness of heaven and earth. I believe you said that's how Martin defined the word attunement. And we've known that. We know it. It's now, it's at one-ment. We're at one. And this experience of oneness may always, always, always be known. It is always present with us to be known. And so how beautiful to know it.
I would like to add my voice of appreciation for both of you and and what your spirit brought forth, your unique essences and your stories. And you mentioned the sacred commitment that we've made. And throughout our lives, we've had, I love the rose garden story too, and all of the examples throughout our lives. I'm sure each of us have had those little inklings of, oh, I need something more. I need to do something more. And our guiding spirit has directed us to be in the right places, the right times, meet the right people, so that that voice of remembrance of the divine commitment kept nudging us until we were drawn together as a body of angels who have let those clouds of all of the forgetfulness and all of the impurities and all of the things that have clouded where we are here and fully knowing it. I know that I know. And we have come and are here together in this collective to let the Lord's work be done. We were saved for this particular world to let his spirit. Thank you.
Deborah and Anne experienced waves of deep emotion, deep feeling, moving through my heart. As you spoke and told stories. There were times where I felt the experience of those biblical stories when one man or woman came in contact with the angel and was brought to his knees, bowed his head toward the ground, and was speechless before the beauty of the spirit that was present. And the word of the angel said, "Stand up." Essentially said, "You are me on earth. You are my beloved son. Find your voice. Speak my word. Feel the depth of my great heart in your heart." And I love the stories that you told, Deborah, because they activate this great current of spirit. And Anne, I lived with you over the last 7 months as you've gone through some of what you shared with us of your story around attunement. And that the atmosphere of our whole home is changed. The pneuma field in which I walk is transformed. Living in that attunement field, conflict is impossible. Step out of it, and you're right in the midst of the horror. But because you actually brought a presence of one who knows, there's stillness and humility, deep gratitude, a sense of oneness and love. Makes it easy to say, "I love you." And as Martin said to you, Deborah, we are so blessed to be together, knowing what we know of these heavenly things on earth. Thank you both deeply.
That's where I wanted to pick up on what David mentioned, the story that you told, Deborah, of Martin holding your hand. And as you were relaying that, I felt like I was holding your hand and everybody in this group. And I felt, I mean, there was the attunement in action. And I looked around at all our faces and I was thinking, how could I be alive without all of you in my world? And the blessing that comes from that. And that also, as you were emphasizing, Anne, awakens us to our extraordinary responsibility. First of all, to the Lord of love, but then that extends from the first commandment to the second, that we should love one another. And the responsibility I felt today in, being emphasized of the responsibility we have to each other. And then also I was thinking, how else could this assembly of people we put together except by life? I mean, it's extraordinary. So look around. Some we know from an earthly standpoint, but I feel like I'm at home and I know each one of you as an angel. And thank you so much for creating this setting for us today so we could have this heavenly experience with you. Thank you to both of you.
This seems like a good point for me to follow. Thank you for all your comments to this point. And I'm marveling at the gentleness of the atmosphere that's being created here. Something of this wonderful responsibility of the female and female in agreement. To me, this is something that the earth is longing for, because we have created so much chaos in our attempt to compete with one another or to outsmart someone. And here we are coming together with a renewed innocence about the truth of love. And I love the opening of this purification aspect in the attunement process that Anne was referring to, because that is where this healing current for the body of man is going to originate. We are in this fourth sacred school now, and it does require the purification of the heart so that the spirit, the true spirit, can come through. And as a group, I think we're finding this beginning to open up. This is an attunement process for the archangelic body with which we share in this process. And how beautiful to have these two lovely women in a sense of innocence, forgiveness, appreciation. We find agreement in this spirit. And all those who have offered something have shared in the intensification of this process together. So I'm most grateful to be in the company of such angels. Thank you for this beautiful opportunity to share in the temple at this time. Most love.
I'm aware of very deep, excuse me, very deep power here. And it's coming from the profound humility that I witnessed, experienced with Anne and Deborah. There's something in that current of humility, and below that, or coming up from that, some immense sense of power, which is coming from that transcendent reality into the dimensional place of space and time through these two women and through us collectively as we participate in it I remember John saying, if we witness or observe it, we are changing it or creating it or co-creating it. And I think I had that not only experience, not observing it, but actually something is occurring here which defies description, but I wish to acknowledge it, so thank you.
I too would like to acknowledge it, and to acknowledge Anne and Deborah and what you have brought to us today, which is so precious and moving and rich. And I was thinking just now of the line in one of our hymns, the mystery of God is finished on earth. Come and behold him and her and us. Thank you for this blessed hour. Thank you.
It always is magnificent to come and behold him, to have this sacred time. I love this grouping because there's no limit to where we can go in spirit together. And as you spoke of your experience of attunement, I too have experienced that for so many years, and it's new and fresh every day, every moment. And Deborah, I've loved you for so many years. It's beautiful to share your spirit together. So how blessed we are that we can come together and open our hearts in joy and worship and singing praise to that great one, the eternal one, as Joseph Fantel said this morning. I love that this is where we are right now, in this upper room, that we can share these times together, and it's always available. So Zoom might end here in a little bit, but the connection and the current does not. It just continues to build and to grow and to radiate. And that is that precious substance. So I thank you both for your focus and for everyone's substance that's contributed to this exquisite hour together.
It has been exquisite. Actually, it was a rich feast from both of you. And can you hear me? Yeah, okay. And I felt that what you, actually, I think I could talk about 25 things that you said, but the two that stand out to me right now is how much opened for you through this beginning to share attunement on a regular basis, long distance, and what that opened of new insights and thinking for you. And also the responsibility of holding that sacred space, both before, during, and after. So I think you amplified, at least for me, you amplified the attunement server's experience. And I know many times I've focused more on, well, what did the person who received the attunement experience? So I really appreciated that. And Deborah, your stories, and both of you spoke from your own experience very genuinely, with great power and clarity. And your stories, Deborah, were so intimate. I am so grateful that you shared them with us, and particularly what you shared of your time with Martin. For me, that brought vividly back that depth of intimacy of knowing that I'm sure many of us had of this being and our very specific connection with this being, and what that evokes from us of what is ours to do, of being at the right place at the right time now, as the whole solar system moves into a new space, vibrational space, where the human distortions can no longer exist. So I am so proud of you, my sisters. You make me happy to be a woman. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia, and thank you, everyone. There's something about accepting the fact that the mystery of God is finished on earth. That part is over, folks. And then this knowing, there are things that I knew forever. And when I heard Martin and Yolanda saying them, it was no surprise. It was just, oh yes, you do know that. And I mention this because I know that that kind of knowing gives us a stability and a confidence and a reality where there is no chance of failure. The life is one of victory always. And so we don't have to mess around with fixing things up or hoping it works. We know it's working beautifully, and especially because of, for instance, these two beautiful women that opened and led the way today. And we are all that, and we all could do that. That's why we're together now. And the mystery is finished. Here we are. Thank you.
Deborah and Anne, I so appreciate the space that you've brought us into here, that you've invited us into, and that you've held. The ease of it and the naturalness of it is something I'd really like to emphasize. And also the power. It's funny, sometimes I've thought of power as is something that you strain to release power. I'm going to radiate. And that's, it's so clear in what we're sharing in this moment that it actually comes through another way, through the heart. And I'm also reminded of the command to tarry in the upper room. And I feel we have tarried here today, thanks to what you have brought and the willingness of all of us here on the line to go there with you. This is an exquisite gift, great treasure indeed. With you in this, as I hold this with you in a relaxed way in the days to come.
Deborah, your words, Deborah, go ahead. Deborah, you have something to say?
Yeah, I feel the veil has thinned for many, many of us. And it's also thickened for others. This idea of tarrying actually came up in this Bible verse that came to my mind, that the knowledge of God, which passes all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Jesus Christ. Our minds and hearts are kept well and clear if we stay in that sacred space. And that's not to say that we don't act. That's not to say that we don't feel deeply, but we have right useness in the moment where we know what and how to do and say. So that would be my concluding thought. Thank you for all your kind comments. What's true of me or you is true of us all. There are 7 billion angels incarnate on the planet, and we know because their eyes blink.
And do you want to finish there, or anyone else have a comment?
Thanks, Steve. I'd like to read a devotion by Martin that I think fits. In the quietness and serenity of this moment, we are aware, O Lord, that the truth is true, and we are aware of our individual responsibility to make known that truth in daily living, that every thought, every word, every action may be the evidence of the radiation of thy spirit, which is known as our own. Thy spirit remains unknown to us until it is our own. Then the radiation of life, characterized by the truth of love, shines forth into the earth in creative expression, that all things may be made new and revealed as new by the reflection of that light out of the world of our environment. We are deeply thankful, O Lord, in this moment, for the joy of letting this true attunement be reestablished, that the oneness of heaven and earth may once again permeate the consciousness of mankind, all to thy glory, in the Christ. Amen.
Thank you. Beautiful.
Great way of concluding, and in simple words, I'd say, let's let love radiate. Our next Temple of Light service will be on August 21st. And Ye Hong and Di-hee, is that how you say it, David? And our Korean friends, Marcia, you're laughing at me for my pronunciation here. Our Korean friends will be leading us in service on August 21st. We look forward to that time. So, Robert, you have some music?